let's get to the last stream here. Yes, some of you have already called it. We are gonna do the Berlin Wall via the satellite ship. Yes, indeed. We watched the biggest logistical flex on Germany, or on Russia for Germany, and he said that he was going to be doing this one next. Obviously, this is an old one, so yes, we are going to check this out. Okay, Marseille, have a good night. So, let's check it out.
People are probably going to get mad and call this video propaganda, but in my defense, it's not my fault. The only thing you have to do to make anti-communist propaganda is to open a history book and start reading it out loud. Today we're talking about the Berlin Wall. It is one of the greatest examples of capitalism versus communism, East versus West, Hungry versus Fed that the world has ever seen. But first, a word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by Operation Good Boy. It's a monthly subscription box. It's got all kinds of good... Are you okay? Don't puke in my office, please. Yeah, you're gonna get a treat in a second if you don't puke. Okay, hang on, 1 second. You've ruined my intro. Anyways, it comes with all kinds of cool stuff for your dog. We've got
cute.
Dog poop picker-upper bags. We've got a little doggy first aid kit.
It might be a Labradoodle.
We've got daily multivitamins for him. And then we've got Mushu's favorite, the TRE, the treats ready to eat. These are made right here in America. And Mushu is a big fan, right? Give me a shake. Good, you didn't puke. Wonderful
He's a good boy.
Good job. So yeah, if you've got a dog, go check out Operation Good Boy. I'll have a link and a discount code in the description down below. Let's get back to the video. All right, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the biggest logistical flex of all time, that being the Berlin airlift, when the USSR tried to blockade off West Berlin to force them to become communist and to join the USSR. And America and the UK teamed up to deliver them supplies using only cargo planes, landing a cargo plane into West Berlin every 2 minutes, all day, every day for 15 months straight, feeding and supplying an entire city with 4.6.
Didn't in the last video we saw didn't he say it was 18 months, not 15 months? I could have sworn he said 18 months in the last video. Am I wrong? I don't know. I'm sure someone in the comments section when I post this on YouTube will tell me.
6 billion pounds of supplies. If you want to watch that full video, I'll have that linked right here. If not, that's fine. Here's the bare minimum background info that you need. Right after World War II, Germany was basically split into two pieces. You had the Western powers, America, the UK, and France, controlling the western half of Germany, and you had the USSR controlling the eastern half. And here's where that gets weird. They did the same exact thing with the city of Berlin, where the West controlled the western half and the USSR controlled the eastern half, except Berlin was 100 miles into the USSR territory. And this is why the USSR blockaded off West Berlin and tried to force them to join, because they didn't want a little speck of capitalism in their communist utopia. But the West isn't about to back down from a challenge, so America and the UK team up, Wonder Twin powers activate, they launch the Berlin airlift, they feed an entire city using nothing but cargo planes, and after 15 months, the USSR is finally forced to end the blockade because they can't afford to try to stop them anymore. So 1949, the roads and railways to West Berlin open back up, and everything goes back to working exactly how it was supposed to, and this is where the story really begins. From 1949 to 1951, we had what was known as a green border between East and West Germany. Basically, there was a border there. They're two separate countries. However, it was very, very easy to go from one country to the other and back. It was no big deal at all, which was really important because you have to remember, they just drew an arbitrary line right through the middle of Germany and were like, hey, these are two separate countries now. It was really complicated for a lot of people. You had people that had family members that now live in a different country. You had people whose home was in one country and job was in the other. You had farmers and property owners that now owned property in a country that they didn't live in. It was very, very complicated. And while the border is essentially open, a ton of people from East Germany are taking advantage of it and migrating to West Germany because it's way, way better to live in West Germany, where the evil capitalist pigs from America and the UK have been funneling in billions of dollars worth of food, money, and resources, helping to build West Germany back up as a country, as opposed to the USSR over in East Germany, who has done the exact opposite, because they said, hey, we want our war reparations and we want them right now. The USSR takes over $10 billion worth of hard assets and natural resources out of the East German economy and ships it back home. That is a third of the working capital of the entire country. Quite literally just took a third of their economy and got rid of it. And if that wasn't bad enough, they also liquidated almost every factory in East Germany. They took all of the machinery, all the parts, all the material that they had and shipped it back home to the USSR. Not only have they stripped East Germany of all of their product, they've stripped them of their ability to produce. They can't even
Why?
work themselves out of this difficult situation. Because of this, understandably so, people start leaving East Germany in
Yeah. They, like, yeah. Okay. I understand. Communists are stupid. But this is, you're saying East Berlin is in the USSR. Well, I mean, granted, I'm not a communist, so I find it very difficult to wrap my head around just logically why they would do this.
Because
And
of one named Joseph Stalin.
maybe like the only thing I think of is like, did they seriously just want to just like run East Berlin into the ground and then abandon it? Like they were going to pillage it essentially and then just fucking abandon it and say, you know what, screw it, you're on your own? Because that's the only thing that really makes sense with this. Is if that was their plan, that they were just going to essentially just like abandon it. Like strip it for parts essentially and abandon it. Yeah. No, I understand that, Andrea. But, you know, this is their territory, and they're stripping it bare. So what the fuck is anybody gonna do? It's like, it's not like it's not like it's gonna be productive to make the country any money. I I don't know. It's like, I understand Stalin was a fucking maniac and like a genocidal freak. It's just, from a logical perspective, this makes East Berlin completely useless to the USSR. Like, it's not even worth possessing. I don't know.
droves. Now, by 1952, the USSR identifies this problem, understanding, oh shit, obviously our policies aren't very popular, we should probably do something about that. The only question is, what are we gonna do about it? Do we A, come up with new policies that incentivize people to stay, making them want to be there and making them want to be a productive member of this society? No, absolutely not. We're gonna go with option B, old reliable, good old-fashioned human rights violations. Okay, so here's the plan. We're gonna shut down the border between East and West Germany. We're gonna build a wall or a fence, and I know what you're thinking, walls don't work. Well, if the wall doesn't work, you know what is gonna work? The landmines that we put on the other side of it.
Yep.
And if that doesn't work, we're gonna get guard dogs. And if the guard dogs don't work, we're gonna put up a bunch of guard towers, and we're gonna have over 20,000 men with guns watching the border 24/7 all the time, and they have the authority to shoot anyone trying to escape on sight. Now, obviously, there's one glaring hole in this plan. What if somebody is able to get past the wall, navigate through a minefield, evade the dogs, and they get seen by the guard, but because the guard is an East German and he probably doesn't want to be in East Germany either, what if the guard just doesn't shoot him and lets him go over to West Germany? Well, that's where the giant sand pit comes in. We're gonna line the entire border between East and West Germany with a 30-foot wide pad of sand, and that way we'll be able to see any footprints when somebody runs out of East Germany into the West. And then we're going to know that somebody escaped, and we're going to hold the guard on duty for that sector responsible, and then he's going to get in trouble. Buh! Having a very secure border isn't a human rights violation. Buh! Well, right, when you're using it to keep people out, but when you're using it to keep people in, it's absolutely a human rights violation according to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Let me just read that for you. Article 13, Section 2, quote, everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and return to his country, end quote. So yes, turning an entire country into a prison and refusing to let anyone leave.
Well, okay, Aaron, simple answer. The guards don't walk on those for patrol. The guards are in guard towers. They don't, this whole thing. The sand pit was in an area that actually was not to be patrolled. It was the last thing before you reached West Berlin. So it's basically, it's like well, no, because it's, to get to the sand pit, you would have to go through the minefields and scale the wall. Yeah, it was in this space between East Germany and West Germany. And so no one would go there. So the guards would not be patrolling in that area. That's the whole thing. That was the whole concept behind it. the only people that would be in that area where the sandpit is would be people defecting from East Germany. Well, you can see them from the guard towers. You gotta remember, these guard towers are fairly high, and they're overlooking this sandpit. So if a superior officer just comes in and just looks with the binoculars and they see footprints in the sand, well, that means that guard in that guard tower was not doing his job, and then very likely would get executed. Because that's how things work in East Germany.
Leave while you oppress them is in fact a human rights violation. However, to be completely intellectually honest, I do have to tell you that the Soviet Union is one of only 3 nations that refused to sign the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and they refused to sign it specifically because of Article 13, Section 2, which I just read to you. They basically said that they would only consider signing it if this was added to the end of Article 13. Quote, in accordance with the procedure laid down in each country, end quote. They were unanimously declined because that would ruin the entire point of Article 13, which would basically just mean that, yeah, you have a human right to leave a country unless that country tells
the country says you
don't.
So
what's the point of even having that as a human right? So the border is pretty much completely shut down. The only exceptions to that are the fact that you can apply for a visa to leave East Germany. However, it's very expensive. You get interrogated by the government, and the only people to actually get these visas awarded to them are people that are working on behalf of the Communist Party or somebody that is obscenely rich and is for sure coming back anyways, which seems like a weird hypocritical policy for a communist regime whose ultimate goal is to have a moneyless, classless society where everybody is treated equally to have, but whatever. And then,
well, it's communism. And, Emirus, thank you for the follow. Welcome. Yeah, it seems counterintuitive to have a moneyless, classless society, but it's communism for the regular people. But for the wealthy and the oligarchs, it's completely different. More like everyone else is at the bottom and the people with money lord over them. Hence the oligarchy. So, and the oligarchy were basically paying the communist government to be treated differently. It honestly, something that is not a staple for communism. Let's be completely honest here. Having privilege with the government because you're rich is not limited to communism. You will find that literally everywhere in the world. Everywhere, without exception. Exactly. Plenty of oligarchy in the USA, in the UK, in France, in Amsterdam, in Sweden, in Canada, in Mexico, in Brazil. It doesn't matter. If you have money, you are above everyone else and can basically tell the government to go fuck themselves. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. This wealth equaling power and oligarchies is nothing new. And is not limited to communism, no matter how much people want to try and say otherwise. Exactly. It needs everything on paper is great if it was run by robots. Which is why I, for one, welcome our future robot overlords.
Of course, they have to allow travel from West Germany into West Berlin, and to do that, there's very, very strict routes anybody traveling from West Germany to West Berlin has to take, and they have to go straight.
I hate communism, but I can also fully understand, appreciate, and point out the immense fallibility of capitalism as well. Simple as that. Because there is no such thing as a quote-unquote utopian society. Utopian society is a myth. It cannot exist. Because human nature will not allow for a utopian society to exist. The moment you set up what is considered a utopia, instantly you will have a section of the populace that will fuck it up, which will snowball into everything fucking up and just going back to the way it was. because that is human nature. Point blank. Fact is, it was best said in T2, when it comes to humanity, it is in your nature to destroy yourselves. Or, as in another famous saying, a person is smart, people are dumb, stupid, panicky animals, and you know it. So, that's why, communism obviously is a horrible way to try and live in a society. But but capitalism is not, the perfect alternative either. And neither's any society on planet, on Earth. Nothing is perfect. Everything has plenty of flaws that can be pointed out to it. And they'll always exist. They will. You can try and account for them as best you can. There are going to be flaws that will never go away. You just gotta try and deal with them as best you can. It's as simple as that. Just try not to have, the whole thing is like capitalism does not have as many flaws as communism. That's where capitalism learns from communism, but at the same time, capitalism's got its own flaws. I have not Xanax.
Strict routes anybody traveling from West Germany to West Berlin has to take, and they have to go straight from one straight to the other, and they hit multiple checkpoints along the way. And this is extremely important because it opens up the Berlin loophole, because Berlin, the city that's 100 miles into communist territory, has that little speck of capitalism in it, and there's no border between West Berlin and East Berlin. So you can literally just walk from East Berlin right into West Berlin, and it's not an issue at all. So that becomes the only way to escape East Germany. People travel to East Berlin and then simply walk into West Berlin, and then they catch a car or a train or a bus from West Berlin to West Germany, and then they never go back. And between 1952 and 1961,
wow,
somewhere between 2 and 4 million people do this. Bear in mind, East Germany only has a population of 17 million. That's over 20% of the population walks into West Berlin and never comes back. And of the people that did leave, they were disproportionately young, highly skilled, highly intelligent people like doctors, lawyers, skilled tradesmen, engineers. And because of this got the nickname the brain drain. So in 1961, the USSR is like, oh shit, this is a humongous problem. All the young, smart people are leaving. We got to do something about this. Should we?
This is what happened. This is what happens when you strip a country for parts, or a city, excuse me. This is what happens when you strip, basically, a city for parts. Is people are gonna say, fuck this shit, I'm out. I have better opportunities. What the hell did they expect? And hello, Astro Boba. How's it going? Okay, Beth, have a good night. Yeah, country, yeah, sorry.
Incentivize highly successful young people to want to stay here? Nah. Break out Old Reliable, more human rights violations for everybody. So, August 13th, 1961, in the middle of the night, a bunch of East German construction workers and cops show up with guns, and they put a fence all the way around West Berlin. Not to keep the West Berliners in, but to keep the East Berliners out. And East and
no, your dog, it really didn't, because here's the thing. Most modern countries right now, the vast majority of civilized countries right now have socialized medicine. The United States is probably the only modern civilized country in the world right now that does not have socialized medicine. The only one. Every other country has socialized medicine. The only one. And you can thank capitalism for that. You can absolutely thank capitalism for that. There was an attempt made. I mean, some are, yes, sadistic. Yes, some do. But I don't think they're exactly fleeing in droves. I don't know. I haven't heard that a lot of doctors are leaving Europe to go to the US. That's not something I've heard. Now, depends on which country we're talking about. Yeah, the U.S. is still largely seen, regardless of your job. This could be doctors, it could be anything. Regardless of that, the U.S. and North America as a whole, honestly, it is viewed as the land of plenty as still. It's not, I don't think it's a question of the socialized medicine, being that the factor, it's a lot of these countries are in in poor economic states for a multitude of reasons. But like there are a lot of like doctors and like Canada, for example, they are getting Canada has a massive influx of immigrants from East India and Asia, particularly the Philippines. That's it, but this is not because but Canada has socialized medicine. It's because they're coming from countries that are not economically viable. In fact, Canada actually had to put a stem. They're having to come up with new rules for immigrants that are coming here particularly for school, because there was such a massive influx of immigrants into Canada that the entire country suffered a massive housing crisis where people could not find places to live because they had so many immigrant students from India and Pakistan and the Philippines. But that's not because of that. But that's not because the Canada doesn't have socialized healthcare. It does. It's just that they're coming from poor nations over in Europe and Asia, like the Eurasian era, and they're coming to what is considered the quote-unquote land of plenty.
Other nations have socialized medicine because the US doesn't. We spend the most on military spending, while the rest of NATO have tiny military. Most of Europe pay for socialized medicine with money that would have been used for military spending.
Yeah. That is true. But they also, NATO may have a tiny military, but the individual countries probably have decent military for themselves outside of NATO. The US, when it comes to medicine, the US could spend money on healthcare for its citizens. They could. But they won't, because the financial parties involved in making people actually pay for healthcare have the ears of the government. Theoretically, the U.S. could take some of money from the military to put it into actual healthcare. They tried with they tried when Obama was in, and they fought him so hard they couldn't try and work anything out, and they had to come up with something basically that was ramshackle, honestly. But that's because one half did not want it whatsoever. They would not even try. They did not even make the effort. If all parties actually made an effort to put together some kind of socialized medical care in the US, then it could get done. It absolutely could get done. If all parties involved actually tried and put in the effort. But because they're not going to, and we know they're not going to, it's never going to happen. So that's how it is. Yeah.
Cheer 100. Bear in mind, per the WHO, the VA in the US is the most successful socialized healthcare system in the world.
Oh yeah. And it treats a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the population. There you go.
West Berlin at this point in time were still very much intertwined. There were people that lived in the East and worked in the West and vice versa, and there were people that had family members.
The world's military budgets reached $244 trillion, with the United States spending the most at $916 billion. This was over 40 of the world's total military spending. Second place was China at $296 billion. Third was Russia at $109 billion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I know. Well, and Taurus, that's the thing with the VA, is they've got the care, but they're getting overloaded. The VA is getting overloaded, and there's nothing. No one's doing anything to alleviate that overpressure. And again, you know where you can point the finger. Well, Aaron, you can't point the finger at the VA because the VA is underfunded. That's the problem. It's grossly underfunded. There you go.
Members on one side or the other side, and there were people that owned businesses and property. There were people that were seeing relatives and got separated from their families, and they weren't allowed to get back on the other side of the wall. There were literally thousands of people in Berlin that woke up one day and it was just like, congratulations, you just lost your job, you just lost your property, you lost your business, you're now separated from your family. Because of this, people started trying to break into West Berlin, or they were breaking out into East Berlin to get people and bring them back into West Berlin. At first it was easy because it was just a fence and you could cut your way through it or you could scale it, but that fence rapidly turned into a 12-foot high concrete wall. And then when people started bringing ladders to scale over the top of it, they added a gigantic round metal top to it so there was nothing to grip and pull yourself over. And then they added barbed wire and guard towers and guards that were allowed to shoot you on sight and turned it into a full-on demarcation line around West Berlin. And that is when the escape attempts got incredibly creative. One of the more popular ones at the very beginning was that somebody from West Berlin would remove the gas tank from their car and they would just have a little 1-gallon jug for gas, just enough gas to drive into East Berlin, pick somebody up, and drive back to the West. And the person would be strapped up underneath the car where the gas tank was supposed to be. But then the communists figured that out, and then they had the guards at every checkpoint before a car could go into West Berlin. They would take a flexible metal wire and shove it down into where the gas tank should be to make sure it was in fact a gas tank. So then that plan was out. So one guy decided he was going to take his BMW Isetta, cut the roof off, and then he was just going to drive right underneath the checkpoint going full speed, and he was going to duck, and that's how he was going to break into West Berlin, and that's exactly what he did. And because of this, the East Germans added spike strips and barricades to every checkpoint. Every time somebody escaped into West Berlin, the communists fixed however it was possible. They made it more and more difficult, and the escape attempts got more and more creative. Some of my personal favorites include shooting a steel cable over the wall from a high building and then ziplining to the other side, having somebody from West Berlin get a cow costume and tow a...
Okay. The idea of basically doing a zip line from East Berlin to West Berlin sounds fucking awesome. That does. Yeah, I mean, pick your favorite action movie on that one. That's like some Batman shit right there. Honestly, like, I'm kind of surprised we didn't see something like that in, like, Atomic Blonde. If you guys haven't seen that, Atomic Blonde is a movie about an American spy that goes into East Berlin to extract someone. It's like right at the time that the wall was going to be coming down. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't try pulling something like that, because that would have been cool.
Cattle trailer into East Berlin and then have two of his friends dress up in the cow costume and stand in the cattle trailer as they made it through the checkpoint, stealing a tank and trying to drive it through the wall. And when you got away from the Berlin Wall itself and you actually went to the East and West German border, the escape attempts got even crazier. One group of brothers took a farmer's crop duster, painted it like a Soviet MiG plane, flew it from West Germany into East Germany, picked up their other brother and flew him back. And my absolute personal favorite escape from communism was when two fathers got together and for a year and a half gathered fabric and propane and supplies so that they could build a fucking hot air balloon to escape to West Germany. Okay, I'm gonna say that again, but a little bit slower.
Nice.
8 people, 2 families, 2 fathers, 2 mothers, and 4 children escaped communism using a hot air balloon. Do you understand the gravity of what I've just told you? Because as a husband...
Yep, and apparently they didn't give a shit either, because they fought gravity and won. King Elzadam, thank you for the follow. Did they make a movie about it? Cool. Well, you know, all the best escapes from communism do tend to get made into a movie.
And a dad, it speaks volumes to me that 2 men in my situation got together, looked around, and said these living conditions are so horrific that the best bet for me and you and our wives and our kids is to secretly gather up a bunch of cotton fabric, aka flammable shit, sew it into a balloon, attach it to a wicker basket, more flammable shit, and then propel it with a fucking flamethrower as we try to get away as fast as the wind will take us while the guards are shooting at us. Okay, look, all I'm saying is...
And leave us not forget, pray that the wind doesn't change. The moment the wind changes directions and you start getting blown back the other direction, oh fuck.
I've never seen anybody that determined to escape capitalism. That's all I'm saying. But that's not real communism. Of course it's not, because it's never real communism whenever something goes bad. But whenever something goes bad under capitalism, it's 100% capitalism's fault, and we should get rid of it and do communism instead. Granted, communism every other time we've tried it's ended in genocide and murder and human rights violations, but hey, I'm feeling it this time, guys. We're just like... We're this close to just 1, maybe 2 more genocides, and we're gonna have that communist utopia. We should keep trying. I can't. I need a beer. Jesus. Sorry, I got carried away. I apologize. Anyways, the wall...
Once again, I'm gonna point out that a lot of people, when they, you know, there's often a conflation of socialism with communism. That's a lot of people, when people start talking about socialism, such as like the universal healthcare and things like that, people erroneously conflate it to communism. And it's not. That's why I've said before that when it comes to this, it's you cannot, of course you cannot have a 100% socialist society. That of course also will not work. Just like you can't have communism, you can't have a society that's socialism. Certainly not. That's not going to work. But what you need to do is you have a capitalistic society with socialism strategically inserted into it. If you do a strategic input of socialism in key points within a capitalist society, they will complement one another, and then it can start working. But for whatever reason, people hear socialism and they automatically go, oh, communism. It's like, no, you dumb fuck. There is a difference. But so many people these days are brainwashed into whatever the fucking talking heads say on their favorite, left or right-wing news program. They just parrot it back without actually thinking about it. Yeah, exactly. And that's why Tysell, that's why I said strategically positioned. If it's done properly, if you don't just like do the throw the spaghetti at the wall thing. It's you have to do it properly. And yes, I know, Aaron. Like doing something properly is like a miracle in and of itself, but it can be done if actual smart people do it. There's a significant lack of that these days.
Around Berlin gets more and more impenetrable, and eventually the only way to actually escape into West Berlin is to dig a tunnel and crawl your way out, which a ton of people did. Now obviously this is a PR nightmare. The communists have to explain to everybody why on earth they blocked off West Berlin and they're not letting anybody through, and because of that they decide to give the Berlin Wall their name, the Anti-Fascist Rampart. Fascism, obviously referring to Nazis, which makes this, I believe, one of the first historical appearances of the unfortunately still prevalent line of thinking that anybody that disagrees with me or how I live my life or my politics must be a Nazi. Yeah, that was the official stance of the Soviet Union, basically accusing every Western power of being a fascist regime and saying they built the wall to, quote, protect against fascist elements conspiring to prevent the will of the people, despite the fact that the apparent will of the people was to leave their communist regime, but whatever. Just excuse me one more time. I'm so sorry. I just have to Google something real quick. How to recognize a cult. Absolute authoritarianism without accountability. Check. Zero tolerance for criticism or questions, like getting arrested for political jokes. So I'm going to go with check. Lack of meaningful financial disclosure regarding the budget. Check. Unreasonable fears about the outside world that often involve evil conspiracies and persecutions. Check. Okay. Sorry. Anyways, back to the video. Despite all the
what's really kind of scary is how that checklist applies to so many different mindsets. So many. Listen, exactly. Especially the both sides part. Because this is not one side or the other. It is both. And that's why I talk about why there's nothing but extremes these days, and that does not work, because they're both wrong. Both of these extremes are wrong, and need to shut the fuck up. They are not going to, but they need to.
Propaganda saying the Western world was literally just a bunch of Nazis. Most people in East Germany didn't buy it, and a ton of them still tried to escape to the West. Over the duration of the Berlin Wall, over 100,000 people would be captured and imprisoned for either telling political jokes, criticizing the government, or attempting to escape. In just a couple years, by 1964, these political prisoners were starting to stack up really quickly, and the USSR had to do something about it because it was costing them money and the prisons were full and they had to get rid of all these people. So, I mean, what's a communist regime to do? Well, that's easy. We've got
True Spectre, this is why I'm not anything. This is why if somebody asks me which, am I this side or that side, I say I'm fucking neither. I'm an individual that uses their brain to look at a situation, reason it out logically, and fuck what neither side is saying. Neither side's going to influence me. I'm going to look at it and think about it logically. You don't need to be affiliated with any kind of political ideology or party. You shouldn't be, honestly. The only way that shit's gonna get done is if you leave politics out of the equation entirely. That's the only way shit is gonna get done now. And that's why I don't do politics. I think politics is disgusting. I fucking hate every bit of it. And why I don't deal with it.
The prisons were full and they had to get rid of all these people. So, I mean, what's a communist regime to do? Well, that's easy. We've got all these prisoners that we don't want. They don't want to be here. Let's ransom them over to the West. And that's exactly what they do. They ransomed 33...
We need to evolve into Vulcans.
Well, Vulcans isn't a great thing either because they repress emotion. And emotion is what makes all of those feel-good stories possible. All of those, without the Vulcans, you don't have the heart of people doing what needs to be done regardless of their own personal risk. That's the problem with the Vulcans. Again, it's another one of those on paper, it sounds good. In practice, it fucking sucks. Oh yeah, Barb, every government says bad. Every government's bad. Right now, all governments throughout the world are doing this extreme shit on multiple sides. Every government in the world right now has gone this route. That's why I fucking hate all of it.
3,000 political prisoners to the West, and the West paid on average 4,000 Deutschmarks per person. I say on average because it wasn't a static price. The USSR put different values on different people based on their skills and job set. For example, a general laborer might only bring 1,800 Deutschmarks, whereas a doctor could bring 15,000. Now, granted, I'm probably reading way too far into this, but I do find it a tiny bit hypocritical that the communist government, the same government that supposedly is striving to create a moneyless, classless society where everybody is equal, is also taking political prisoners, assigning different values on their life based on their ability to produce an economic output, almost like they're putting them into separate classes, implying that some people are worth more than others, and then they're...
Yeah? Chat? Well, this sounds like a slave market, doesn't it? Yeah, this is sounding an awful lot like the slave markets of old. And not the fun kind. Yeah.
They're turning around and trying to sell them to another government for money, which is allegedly something else they don't want, which is, you know, weird. It's almost like it's all a bunch of talking points and bullshit so they can have a bunch of control.
Yep.
I can do this all day. How long? What is it going to take to convince you that communism is bullshit? Tell me. I'll do it.
Your Honor, I object!
And why is that, Mr. Reed?
Because it's devastating to my case!
Overruled.
Good call!
In addition to the 33,000 political prisoners that the USSR essentially auctioned off for money, they also agreed to release 215,000 East German citizens for the low price of 2.3 billion Deutschmarks. Between 1945 and 1989, over 600 Germans were killed either trying to cross the border from East to West Germany or from East to West Berlin. And that is considered to be a very low, very conservative number because the USSR didn't want to release the actual numbers or admit that they'd killed anyone, because every single person they killed trying to escape communism was a huge political hit to them. Which raises the question, what happened in 1989? Well, that's the best part of the whole story. By 1989, the Soviet Union was going bankrupt. They were beginning to crumble. They were losing their sphere of influence, and more civil unrest started to occur. And by November of 1989, in East Germany, there were protests, people demanding that they had the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, the ability to critique their government without getting arrested, and most importantly, the freedom of travel. The communist government knew that they had to give the people an inch before the people turned around and took a mile, and the 1 inch they were willing to give them was they were going to get rid of the travel ban and finally start granting people visas.
Hi, Cryptic! Hello! Tycel, are you double dipping on me? Hello, Succubus! Hello, hi, Cryptic! How is the stream? How is the stream? Look, Cryptic, you missed out on the Sidewinder Derby today. Oh, well, thank you, Cryptic. We gratefully accept all weirdos in this chat. Of course. Of course. Yeah, Cryptic, you missed out on the Sidewinder Derby. We had so much fun. You're gonna have to come back for it next time. We had to, like, we were running around in asteroid fields, blowing each other up. Aww. Hi, baby T-Biz. Oh, Taurus. Thank you, Taurus. Thank you for the 5 gifted. I know, Cryptic, you were out in the black. You gotta come in from the cold, Cryptic. Come back to the bubble. Cryptic, it's working beautifully. Thank you. It's working great. Had no problems. Everybody is saying that I sound much cleaner and much clearer on stream than before. Apparently my model is looking... People were saying the model even looks crisper. With the nib machine. So... Do I, Cryptic? Okay, I cannot wait to hear this on the playdeck. I cannot wait to hear this. And yeah, Tycel, well, we've talked about the whole burn the bubble thing. We talked about that.
Oh, you all decided to fly to Hutton on the Sidewinder? Very smart. Get that anaconda.
The only Sidewinder flying we're doing is the Sidewinder Derby. 'Cause that's fun. And you're right next to a station, so you're not gonna run out of fuel. Okay, Cryptic. Thanks for the raid, and enjoy your meal. Ha ha, last chance. Ha ha.
They weren't going to charge them money, they weren't going to have some special circumstance to do it, and most importantly, they were actually going to approve people and they were going to do it quickly. These new travel regulations were drafted on
No, I
November
don't,
8th.
Cryptic.
They were going to be announced to the public on November 9th on live TV, and on November 10th, they would go into effect and people could show up to the passport office, apply, and ideally get accepted and have the freedom to travel west. And that's kind of what happened. November 8th, the new regulations get drafted. That's fine. November 9th, they
Hey! Johnny! Oh, fuck. Run button. Shit. Oh, goddammit. Okay, never mind.
hand the new regulations to a government spokesperson by the name of Gunter Schabowski, and he's going to read them on a government press conference on live TV.
I said never
He
mind.
didn't have time to read through all the papers. Nobody took the time to explain it to him, so on live TV, he just kind of wings it.
We'll do it live.
He reads off what he thinks is important, which is just, here's the new rules that we're living by, and everybody's like pretty happy about it, and one journalist asks, when does this go into effect? And Gunter, not having time to have read through all the papers, kind of shuffles through them real quick, looking for an effective date, and which he doesn't see one. It's there, he just doesn't see it. So he just kind of shrugs and he's like, as far as I know, quote, immediately, without delay.
Das tritt nach meiner Kenntnis ist das sofort.
And with that, going out on live TV, East Germans got up and started going to the wall. Now, this announcement was at the ass end of a boring government press conference, so not a lot of people saw it, but then the news outlets started picking it up and they started airing it, both in East and West Germany, and then even more people started showing up on both sides of the wall. And within just a few hours, tens of thousands of people had shown up to Checkpoint Charlie, one of the main checkpoints for the Berlin Wall.
And by the way, what he's talking about, what Nick is talking about here, this event, is actually in Atomic Blonde. If you've ever seen the movie Atomic Blonde, what the entire story revolves around this specific event happening, where the walls can be coming down, the announcements are made, and people start storming the wall. Yeah, that was like a big fat. That was basically part of the ticking clock element of the story in Atomic Blonde. It was pretty cool how they took that real world event and integrated it into the story. If you guys haven't seen it, it's a great movie. It stars Charlize Theron, who plays an actual badass spy, where she's like a tough, the quote unquote, strong, independent woman, but she's actually a badass, but she's not invincible. She still can get her ass kicked. And, it's really good. Definitely check it out.
To go from east to west.
I was at my grandpa's and he had us sit down and watch it on the news at It Happened Cheer 100.
It's always good, it's good that Grandpa was like, well, this is going to be a historical event. He was absolutely right. Hell yeah, absolutely. People need to pay attention to these kind of historical events more. We don't see people paying attention to historical events anymore. I don't know, Andrew. There's a minute left, so I'm guessing probably not.
And they demanded to be let go because they had just been told by their government on live TV that they had the freedom of travel, and the guards had no idea what was going on, and they were outnumbered tens of thousands to one. And eventually the guards were forced to simply let people through, and then word spread that they actually let them through, and all of Berlin, both east and west, came out and had basically the biggest block party the world has ever seen, as a city that had been divided in half for 28 years was finally reunited. And then they celebrated this reunification by tearing down the wall that had separated them for so long. In conclusion, Germany after World War II is the closest thing to a controlled experiment that you you can have pitting capitalism against communism to see which one would triumph in real life. They took one country with one people, divided it down the middle, and gave each a set of rules to live by. And while capitalism is far from perfect and it has a ton of things that we can improve upon, I think the results of this experiment speak for themselves. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch, thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang, out.
That was great.
What? Capitalism mostly works and communism never works, shocker. Wait, damn it, I just lost 100,000 social credit day points and my account is now locked. Cheer 100.
Yes, but Aaron, you have unlimited social credit points in the strays.
A lot of my family